Let me share with you the scripture reading that comes today from Hebrews 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the distractions that cling so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. A couple weeks ago, Nancy and I had a chance to go to a very special place. This is the second time we've been there. It's called Chautauqua Institute. It's in western New York State, about an hour south of Buffalo, on Lake Chautauqua. It's been in existence since the late 1800s. It was at that point that a Methodist minister got together with a Presbyterian minister and a Congregationalist, which of course now became United Church of Christ. And they had this odd idea that we need to learn things together. That was radical back then, if you understand. Everybody went their own way. But the goal was to create a place of education and awareness for their Bible teachers. They had this funny feeling that people who taught the Bible needed to know more than the Bible. And so they brought in educators, they brought in all sorts of people who had insights and wisdom. And from that time, this place has grown incredibly so. For 9 weeks in the summertime, each week they have a theme. And they have 4 different elements, if you will, of what people experience when they come there. One is faith and religion. It's still very much a part of it. Education, the cutting edge. No controversial item or issue is ever shied away from. And the arts, they have their own symphony orchestra in the summertime. They have their own opera company. They have their own stage theater. Because a lot of places are off in the summer. They get them from all over the world. And recreation. There's a beautiful lake. It's a great place to go for all ages. In the summertime, they'll get about 200,000 people to come. It's not just a little event. And it's grown. It becomes very, very amazing on what happens. Well, this one week that we went, this was the second year we've been there. And we went, and I mentioned the faith aspect. We stayed at the Disciples' denominational house. Many of the churches, many of the faith areas, there's 22 different faiths involved. Many non-Christian, so to speak. And they have these houses. The Disciples have 2 houses where you can stay at for cheap. The UCC has 3 houses that you can stay at for cheap. It's an amazing community that comes together. But the religion part, the faith part, you see, they have this funny habit of inviting preachers to come who are nothing short of amazing. The week that we were there, Dr. Thomas Long, who has been notarized, or he's been stated as one of the top 12 preachers in America. He can preach. He really can preach. And so the Tuesday morning, because every morning, starting on Sunday, they preach. We have a worship service. And so Tuesday morning especially, it was something very unique for me. It's a full worship service, so we had our announcements. Of course, you can't have worship without announcements, right? And so then, oh, by the way, this isn't an amphitheater. An outdoor amphitheater holds 4,500 people. It's been there since about 1900-ish. Wooden benches, ouch. So you bring your seat pads, and that helps a little bit. So this incredible outdoor amphitheater with a roof on it, and then the music begins. Carol, you're going to love this. The Massey Memorial Organ, who's been there since around the early 1900s and continued to be built upon and enlarged, has 5,640 pipes. Is that good?
Wow.
That's the largest outdoor organ in the world. Some of the pipes are just little straws. Some you cannot get your arm around. We were able to take a tour of it. It's amazing. The master organist who is there, when he plays, your bones vibrate. Now, you really do. It's an amazing feeling. So we had our hymn, and we had a couple more call to worships and some prayer, and then the anthem. They have a Chautauqua choir. The morning version is kind of small, about 70 people. That's kind of a small group that just on the mornings sings. And so they were singing this anthem. I'd never heard it before. I think the title is something like "You Take the World, I'll Take Jesus." Maybe you know that. But it's a beautiful, beautiful hymn. And so they start singing. And with the organ. And with everybody in this amphitheater singing their hearts out. Oh, it's hard to describe. So I'm sitting deeper and deeper into this bench. It's just taking me over. And so I start looking at the choir and noticing how amazing they are. And I see Edgar Peck up there. Edgar Peck, of all people. He was in our church in Northern California. And Edgar, he was an engineer by his vocation. Towards the latter end, he decided that he would get ordained. He felt God's calling. He went back to seminary, got his Master of Divinity. He got ordained. He started serving some churches part-time. But then as he got a little bit older, he decided he wanted to give all his gifts to his local church, which we were pastoring at that time. Edgar was an amazing person. Just incredibly wise and giving and loving, and just could not be around him without feeling good about faith and life. But I knew it wasn't Edgar because he was in hospice care back in Northern California. You see these glasses? I wear them when I'm reading something up close, arm length or closer. And when I'm on the road or when I'm outside, I have sunglasses so I can see far away. But I must admit, my vision is a little fuzzy, sometimes in between. And that choir was just far enough away that I could see, but I really couldn't see their faces. So it looked like Edgar Peck. I knew it wasn't, but it looked like Edgar Peck. And it just started my mind going. I started thinking that he would fit there so nicely, so well. He should be in that choir. And my eyes started continuing looking at the choir members and said, there's Carol Montgomery. Go figure. She was in a church in Jackson, Mississippi. And right beside her, a couple seats, was Jimmy Luft. Actually, it's Jimmy Luft. You know, you have to get 2 syllables out of the last name somehow, Mississippi. But Jimmy was there. And they were singing their hearts out, but of course, it wasn't them. But my mind by that time had just gone and thinking all of the people who have sung to me over the years. All of these people who have celebrated their faith and their life and sang out very clearly, and I've heard their song of encouragement, of love, of hope, of trust, of faith. They were singing in that choir. What an amazing choir. And then my mind really started racing. Oh my gosh, there's Ben Boren. Ben can't sing. If you got a bucket and you try to get a note, you can't do it. Nope. But he was in the choir. And Larry Christ, he's even worse than Ben Boren. And Mary Jacobs. And, Mary Donovan. And I had that choir loft filled. Boyd and Virginia Hughes, Jim Watkins, just kept filling this choir loft with people who have sung to me over my time and sang words of encouragement, sang words of love, sang words of, we are there with you on your journey. And that's when it hit me. That's exactly what this writer was talking about. That cloud of witnesses. That cloud of witnesses that have been a part of our life. Maybe we never met them, but we know their story. Maybe they were very intimate with our lives. They were there every step of the way. Maybe our family, maybe our friends, maybe people in the church, maybe in the community, maybe our neighbors, maybe our co-workers, maybe those that we read about, those who are in that cloud of witnesses that have supported us. The choir loft starts getting full, doesn't it? When you start thinking about all those who have been in our lives. And so I was thinking how wonderful it would be if we just took some time right now and just maybe got into small groups, turned the chairs around, and just started sharing who has been in your cloud of witnesses, who have been in your choir and sung to you. And that would be a marvelous experience. That how warm we would feel. We'd have this little glow about realizing that in no way have we made this journey by ourselves. By no way have we had to do this by ourselves. That we have had those who have constantly been around us. I can see your minds working. Now, who I say, maybe your choir loft is starting to get filled up too. I think that would be a marvelous thing to do. But we can't. Because that's not where the Scripture starts. Did you notice that there's kind of a part A and a part B to the Scripture today? How wonderful it is that we are surrounded by this cloud of witnesses. And then he goes on, so that we can now run our race with perseverance. You see, the writer of Hebrews did this for a reason. If you go back to chapter 11, he starts talking about people who had come before them, and by faith, they had overcome great obstacles and challenges and remained persevering to their race. You see, this is written about 60 to 90 AD. And by that time, this is the second generation of church. This early Christian church is starting to figure out what it is and what it can't be and how it's to survive, and it's not easy. Their lives are filled with obstacles. Their lives are filled with challenges. And they're starting to figure out, do we have it? Can we make it? Can we persevere? Is this what we really are willing to do, and how on earth can we do it? And so the writer of Hebrews says, look at your cloud of witnesses. Look at what has happened in the past. And he goes down there and says, look, by faith. And he tells these stories about Abel and Enoch and Noah and Joseph and Jacob and Moses. He talks about the people by faith who crossed through the Red Sea as if it was dry land. He goes on and talks about others. He sets this framework for look at who has been in your life. Look at who has been in your choir. And now, it's your turn to run the race. Did anybody watch the Olympics? I thoroughly enjoy watching the relays in the Olympics, whether it's track or swimming. And you see what happens is that the first leg, they run or they swim as hard as they can, and they come to their finish of their leg, and they hand off the baton or they touch the side of the pool. And what does the next person do? They just kind of stand still. They say, good job. I'm rooting for you all the way. No, they don't. They take that baton. Or they, as soon as they see the swimmer touch the side of the pool, they dive in. And they swim, they run their leg of the race. It doesn't stop. It keeps going. And then the third leg is done. And then the fourth leg. It keeps going. The writer of Hebrews was trying to get across to the people in this second generation church that yes, you've had all this cloud of witnesses, all those who have gone before you, all those who have made a difference. And now it's your turn. And he even says it pretty clearly. Because he knows the question that's coming up is how can we do this? We're tired, we're lonely, we're worn out, we're discouraged. There's the mountain that we're facing is so big. And so in verse 12 he says, kind of bluntly, therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees and make straight paths for your feet. I love that imagery. Lift your drooping hands. Sometimes we have hands that droop, or those knees that become weak, that we just can't lift up what we need. But he says, no, this is not the time to quit. This is the time to remember that you're not making this journey alone. That cloud of witnesses will be with you, to love you and support you and nurture you and encourage you and invite you and yes, sometimes challenge you, but you will not be in this journey alone. And so it dawns upon me, when it really comes down to it, this scripture, this story, our experience, is not necessarily for us to decide who has been in our cloud of witnesses, who has sung to us. That's part of it. But is it not also the next question? In whose cloud of witnesses will we be? In whose choir will we be? And what is the song that they will be hearing us sing? So that someday they can look back and say, I remember Chuck and Sandra and Albert and Nancy and Linda and Denise and Dave and Kelly Joe and Keith and Megan and Patricia and Jean and they sang to me. In whose choir are you? And what song are you singing to them?